Hey, besties. Thank you for tuning in to a Vibe Called Blessed podcast where we turn up for Jesus and celebrate in our confidence. Thank you for listening. What's up, besties? Welcome back to the podcast. And if you are tuning in, we are continuing with the 30 something Diaries series. And you can tell by the title what we're going to be talking about. If you are new and this is your first time tuning in, I am your host, Shaz, and this is the 30 something diary series where it's just basically my personal audio diary of the place that I am currently in my life and dealing with my relationship with God and questions and things that I've experienced, and I'm just sharing it with you who are listening. All right. So, this to me is a very transparent episode in terms of like me being honest with not only myself, but well, really more so just being honest with myself. And when I tell you guys, I'm feeling everything. And when I mean I'm feeling everything, I feel like I feel God, and I feel God all around me, and not just, yes, the wonderful, warm everything about him, but also I feel his heart, his heart, and his the hurt from his heart involving his people and the lost souls, and just also people that identify themselves as God people. You know, the ones that say they love God, but they don't want to share in the truth with nobody. It's very easy for people to share with people that they're familiar with and tell somebody that God is great. But what about the strangers? What about the people that don't know? That are people that are straddling the fence of whether or not God is real or if God cares for them. People that are curious, people that are hurting, that are looking for that. Are we as God's people doing our part to keep the hope alive for the ones that are burdened, that are hurting, that are weighted, that are confused, that's unsure? And the only reason I know people are looking for that is because I remember when I was in that place. I remember when I was guarded. I remember when I didn't think God loved me. I remember when I was just like, can someone pick me up? Can someone see that I'm hurting without me having to say that I'm hurting? Not that I'm looking for someone to prophesy to me, but just someone that God just understands. I just needed to feel God's love. I just needed to have his peace. I just needed his presence to know that everything was going to be all right. When I didn't know, when I was scared, when I was frustrated, where I felt so alone. And I feel strongly that there is just so many people in this world that are struggling in their faith. And I'm noticing that God has allowed my vision to be able to see clearly what's going on around you. We can dress up, saying, oh, this place is having a service and that place, this church is having a service and they're having this type of event. But it's like, are we really reaching the people? Are we actually putting in the necessary work to reach God's people? And I would think about, the first thing that came to my mind was, before the pandemic happened, I remember riding through downtown, and I remember where there was people. It was this church that was always out there. I don't know if they did it how many times a week, but they were just out there feeding the community. It didn't matter if it wasn't specifically target for the homeless, because sometimes people that are not homeless living on the street are actually hungry. And then the pandemic happened, and then it was like, no, it's like, I'm not saying targeting that particular ministry, but that was the first thing I was like, wow, it's been since before the pandemic. I haven't seen nobody feeding people. And even in that gesture of just feeding them, the Bible teaches us, if you, if someone is naked, to clothe them, if they're hungry, to feed them, if they're thirsty, give them, water, help them out. And everything doesn't have to be where you're preaching of a message to people. It's about showing that agape love, because people want to feel that you can sit there and you can do ministry in a way that, like I'm saying, it's not preachy. Are we honestly, my feeling is like, I love my church and I wouldn't trade them for the world at all. I just feel like, just like any ministry, we always can do more. We are not 100% perfect. We don't, not everybody in there is perfect. We are imperfect people, because that's what God looks for. He looks for imperfect people, because the imperfect people are going to go find the other imperfect people to lead them to the perfect God. He knows that we're imperfect. That's why you see so many scriptures that say that God knew us first when we were in our mother's womb. He knew that we would be born into a world of sin and corruption. It tells us that, all of these things that, about teaches us about worryation and fear, and how our heart can deceive us, and God is greater than our hearts. Why do you think that the Bible says all of these things? Is because God knows that we are imperfect people. He knows that we are in this flesh. He knows that we will make mistakes. He knows that we will fall short of his grace, but yet he is still a promise keeper. He still gives grace. He still offers forgiveness. He offered his one and only son as a living sacrifice for us. Who wouldn't serve a God like that? Who wouldn't love a God like that? So I just, for my own stuff, had just been feeling of like, okay, God, I don't want to be a hindrance to anyone's freedom or anyone's deliverance. So what am I doing wrong? What can I fix? What can I do more of? I feel like I'm not doing enough. What can I do more of? How can I continue to build my relationship? I can't fall short. To me, God is my lifeline. I can't go a day without him. I don't want to live life without him. I don't want to experience life. I have a memory of my life before I was saved, but I don't want to go back to that place, because I know me, I won't make it out if I go back to that. So why would I ever trade on God? Is the journey, is walking with Christ, is it easy? No, it's not. If someone would tell you that, it's a lie. The choice is easy, but you have to understand, but it is a daily choice to stay consecrated. It is a daily choice to fight for my salvation. It is a daily choice to build my relationship with God. But loving him is a non-negotiable. And I'm just, for me, because I love him so much, because I love God so much, I want other people to experience that love. It hurts my heart when people they don't have faith, or they lost trust in God, or they don't believe because something happened. And if everybody in this world that calls themselves believers, right, calls themselves believers and lovers of Jesus, right, if we were all in our place, you never know who you may come across where God will use you to minister to that person in even the simplest way. I remember there was a story that someone posted on Instagram, and they were just checking out at Target. It was a normal day, and God told them to tell the cashier that God loves you. That was it. There was nothing else. She finished ring, and when she heard it, she was just like unsure. It was like, okay, God, I want to make sure that you're clear, because I'm getting to the end. Is that when God says, I need you to tell this person that I love them. She finished ringing up and paid and said, I just want you to know that God told me to tell you that he loves you. And that was it. And that person, that cashier, just started crying. And that was all she did. She doesn't even know to this day what it is that that woman needed, but at that moment she needed to hear it. She didn't go into her story. She didn't ask her questions. She did what God compelled her to do, which was tell this woman that God loves you. Sometimes that's all people want to hear. That maybe that's all people need to hear. You never know. Are we receptive to allow God to lead us and to do what it is that he wants? And so that also leads me to, other things that I'm feeling. I'm like, okay, God, I recognize that there is other ways to share of your goodness, share of the word, to be an encouragement to people. And that goes into, I'm like, okay, expanding my knowledge. God has installed me with many different gifts. And I'm like, I can't sit on my gifts and not utilize them. That would be a crime to him. And I'm noticing because it's always interesting when you find yourself getting back focused into your commitment and getting on the right path back into the plan that God has for you, how much distractions try to come, or much distractions will come to get you off track and off focus onto it, right? And I recently heard someone say, they said, you'll never be fully healed from certain things because it's a daily thing, right? You can be healed from something, but you have to understand that the enemy is cunning and he will try to come in any way to try to trigger and come from a different angle and trigger something that revokes that emotions. And you have to take a step back and say, oh no, I'm actually was healed from that. I was delivered from that. I got to reevaluate myself and say, okay, this has come from this angle in trying to evoke this emotion. So I need to change my strategy. You have to do things differently. You have to switch up on the enemy. And I'm learning for myself is that I don't do well with an idle mind. Not that I'm so busy trying to be so busy to where I don't have time for God, but I realize that for me, I have to stay in prayer. I have to stay connected with God. I have to keep the lines of communication open. I have to do that for myself because if I sit for too long, it's you have to understand is that you got to be careful and mindful of the voice, the next voice that you hear. It may not be God. It can be that's your self-doubt, your fear, all of that. No, I'm not going to suppress it. I'm an overcomer. God never intended for us to just suppress certain things. We're supposed to be healed completely. We're supposed to be delivered. We're supposed to be encouraged, right? So that's what he wants for us, but we don't put in the work to ensure that we are complete in these areas. We get a little bit and we be like, okay, okay, I'm good. But it's like, are you? Are you checking yourself to ensure that you are good and you're okay? And even if you're not okay, it's all is well. Just go back to God and say, hey, I've had to do that. There was things that I thought that I was over, and I promise you, I was like, I'm never dealing with that again. And then something happens, triggers, and boom, I'm like, really? And it's like, I don't want to deal with this roller coaster of emotions. And lately, I've just been feeling a lot of interest in really diving and really stepping into my identity of who I am with God, who I am as a person. What am I supposed to be doing and how do I achieve it? And why is it such a, you know what I'm saying? And trying to recognize, why is it such a fight for me to get there? Is it a fight because I'm fighting myself because I doubt myself, or is it really the enemy trying to stop my progression and my growth? I got to check myself. It's time that we all do a self-evaluation. And, you know, and it's also, I feel a lot of people around me, and it could be just too, I'm learning that I love when I really connect and I love people. I want so much for people, which is not a bad thing. But where I have to learn is that I become so much attached to their damaged parts that I forget that I can't. Sometimes I'm not meant to be the fixer. I'm supposed to just see them in the place that they're in and just pray that God helps deliver them from where they are. And to not, it's okay to feel like you want more for some person, but don't let it consume you to where you lose focus of your own self. I'm so used to carrying so many people, carrying people, I forget to carry myself. Living for other people, forgetting to live for myself. Being so consumed in what other people feel, I forget to check how I feel. And I was like, I can't go back to that. That's just not healthy. That's not good. And I had a conversation with somebody else, and it was crazy how God will allow you to connect with people that are going through situations that are either similar to you or a situation you have come out of or you're growing from, and to be like, wow, and just see yourself, see where you have grown from, or see where you need to work from. And it's like, okay, God, you're allowing to see, if God, you're allowing me to see myself in this person, then that means that I I either need to, I didn't see it from my own self, but you're allowing me to see it through this other person speaking it. And it was just so interesting that someone was like, they very similar. They were just saying how God has shown them. It's like, I gave you a plan for you, but you're so worried about the plan for other people when you're not supposed to be. You're focused on that, and you're taking your focus off of what I said for you to do. If you were supposed to be a part of that plan, or you were supposed to fix it, or you were supposed to be the gateway, then it would have been happened. But you got to realize that sometimes the people that you try to go so hard for, they're too familiar with you, so they wouldn't even be able to fully accept the help, even if I gave it to you to give to them. Crazy, right? Crazy. It's just God is so good. But I'm just feeling a lot, you guys. Like I feel I'm and I know it sounds like a lot of, but I feel a lot of joy too. I'm very optimistic and positive. I'm excited for new journeys and new chapters and experience that God is going to allow me to have. I look forward to things and just certain things I prayed about, the peace that comes from it too. I know that, okay, I feel peace about it. That's how I know that it's God. And so it's like, okay, so let me work at it, and just encouraging myself and doing things for myself. It gets me excited about it. And, you know, I'm grateful to even be able to feel anything. Because I remember when I was depressed and I was numb. I wanted to feel emotions, but I couldn't. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't cry no more. I had nothing left. I was literally numb to waking up every day for 6 months. It was 6 months. I was so unhappy. I knew that I was unhappy, right? Which technically is an emotion, but I couldn't get out of it. I couldn't. I tried to pray, felt nothing. Tried to read the word, felt nothing. Was going to church, felt nothing. Trying to read my word, felt nothing. I remember when I couldn't feel anything. And I was like, is this going to be my life? Is this what it's going to be? I don't want this. I don't like this feeling. But I remember I couldn't for the life of me get out of it. And I know that had to break God's heart. Because it was like, how did you lose focus? How did you? I can't even tell you how I got there. But I thank God that He brought me out. And I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about my emotions and how to express myself and to set boundaries and to not feel bad about being selfish when it comes to certain areas of my life, and not being afraid of certain things that God has shown me. He shown me for a reason. So obviously I need to see it. Whew. Well, I hope that this episode brought some clarity to whomever is listening. And like I always say, don't forget to hit that replay or send this episode to someone else that you know that may need to hear this. If you are a person that maybe you are in a place where you are feeling everything, your emotions are all over the place, I would totally encourage you to find time, set time aside to go before God and be honest. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're sad, if you're depressed, you're dealing with anxiety, or maybe you're happy, you're joyous or something, or you just don't know what you feel, go before the person that knows you better than you know yourself and ask for help or guidance or understanding of what's going on. Or better yet, if you went before God and you told God to expand you, to help grow you, and all of a sudden you're noticing things, you're feeling things you ain't never felt before, you're seeing things, it can be a lot, right? But don't be afraid of God expanding you. It is a beautiful thing to be chosen. That means that He can trust you with the gifts that He has given you. Right? You may not fully understand them. You may not know how to utilize your gifts of what to do and what not to do. But you know what? If you have a leader that's in your life, that God has placed in your life, that you can trust, that you can go to about what's going on with you, then go to them. You know, God, if you trust the God in them, God is going to speak through them to aid and help you. And also, you have your own relationship with God as well. Go before Him. Read your word. Your word shows you the voice of God. Pray, fast, whatever it is that you have to do to just ensure that you are aligning up exactly with what it is that He wants for you to do. We have to take care of ourselves first in order for us to be able to help other people. Well, I thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and I pray that something that I said was encouraging, inspiring, or even to help you think. And until next episode.